Hi guys, this is Niman for BlueFirePoker.com.
And this is Martin Fournier-Giguère for the same site.
And this video is going to be part 3 of my 400 no-limit session that we're analyzing together. As before, I recommend that you watch parts 1 and 2 because our discussion will spin off of the reads and the previous discussion that we had.
Yes.
Okay, you ready to go? Or anything to talk about to start off, or let's just dive into the hands?
I'm ready. This is just,
Okay.
like you said, into the ends.
Off we go.
Actually, those tables, I think, are pretty bad. They're pretty filled up with regulars right now. They're like filling up with regulars nonstop. There aren't that many fishes.
Yeah.
It just makes for more interesting discussions anyway, so it's cool.
Yeah. I actually remember. I don't know if we'll get to that in this video. In fact, I'm pretty sure we won't. But there were some really interesting spots at the very end of my session. So
No, we certainly won't get to that.
we're
Unless like the middle of your session is horribly boring, and then we can make a video that in which we just keep moving forward and nothing's happening. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah. This is actually our third consecutive video that we're recording in one night.
Pretty interesting hand here on table 3. Your 2-barrel with the deuce 3 on that board.
My 2-barrel. I'm actually.
Yep.
We're only on the flop here.
Okay, you're on flow again. I'm
Yeah.
a bit ahead, so yeah.
Yep. Sorry. Okay.
Keep playing. Sorry,
Okay. No
I'm kind
problem.
of selling punches to people at home. He is gonna 2-barrel.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. Let me just pause here, and just so you can coordinate. I'm at 22:57 on the window.
All right, I'm there. Yeah, I'm there.
So yeah, I bet the flop. My idea, once I call, it was a standard continuation bet. I think. I mean, the fact that I have a 3
pretty much.
really doesn't have much to do with anything. It's just it's the kind of board that he's gonna fold most of his hands. Only a queen or a pair and a spade or a high spade can continue. I think.
Yep, just standard.
Right, and once he calls me, I think that if I fire again, I think a lot of his range of calling me there is going to be a queen more so than the high spade, because I think that if he's got the ace of spades in his hand, I think we would see a raise some percentage of the time on the flop.
Yep,
Whereas
I do agree.
just a queen would be more likely to call. So therefore, in my mind, I'm tilting his calling range more towards a queen or a pair, and so therefore, those hands, all his spadeless hands are obviously going to fold now. So I thought it was a good double barrel spot. Do you disagree?
I totally agree that it is a good 2-barrel spot, but I totally disagree with one point, and it is your sizing. I think you're sizing it way too big for the situation here. I don't know if you agree, but the fact is, here it's a spot where you just don't have to size it big because you're so it's so polarized. Like, you're not making him fold much more hands by sizing it big. I mean, you can bet 35 instead of 57 and get a fold from everything which is not a spade like 100% of the time. And I would much rather prefer even sizing it smaller, like 35, like I said, just so I can fire another big barrel in the river. Because if you size your turn bet pretty big, you can't really go ahead and refire the river because he might fold more of his middle low spades if you bet big on the turn, just because he doesn't want to face 2 barrels. But if you size it pretty small, he's gonna call with every single spade most of the time, with any pocket that has a spade in it, and then you fire the river big, he's gonna fold them much more often. So I think I prefer the small turn big river than the big turn where you're basically, he's folding every time he has hair, no matter what. So, and you don't set up yourself. You can't go ahead and refire. If you bet big on the turn, you can't bet big on the river again just because he has more high spades in his range.
Yep.
I don't know if you agree here.
No, I agree with your analysis, but not the conclusion, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I thought exactly as you did. With everything you said, I agree with. However, I thought that this would actually not be a good spot to fire 3 barrels. I figured that if he calls me here on the turn, it's best for me to just shut down. And given that I was going to do that, I wanted to fold out his hands that might be something like 6-5 with the 5 of spades or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
Because the reason is a high spade or even the nuts, the ace of spades. There's no reason for him to raise this board. He's obviously going to slow play. So if I fire a third barrel, I'm sort of doing it blind. Whereas when I'm firing, this isn't always the case, but usually when I like to fire 3 barrels, I like to do it in a situation in which I'm expecting, in which I have a pretty good idea of where my opponent is, and whereas in this case, if I fire 3 barrels, I'm representing exactly the ace of spades only, and there's no telling. I don't know if he'll still call me with a big spade in his hand, as a bluff catcher, and not to mention that there's no reason, if he has the nuts, there's no reason for him to do anything other than slow play and just call the turn. So I had decided that I'm not going to fire 3. And since I decided I was not going to fire 3, I decided to bet heavier on the turn so that I could possibly fold out some hands with like a weakish spade kind of thing.
Okay, I totally agree here with your analysis as well, and I do agree that it's not that great of a 3-barrel spot. I mean, you have both options: either betting big on the turn and then shutting on the river, or betting small then betting big. I think we do agree that those two options are different but kind of equal in a way, and it's gonna depend a lot on the player here. And I think I agree a bit more with your play here because you don't have a read on that player, so you don't even know if he's gonna fold like the 10 of spades if you bet and then rebet the river. I'm gonna go ahead and make those 3 barrels against some specific opponents that I know that if I bet the pot on the river, they are gonna fold even the king of spade 100% of the time. And since, like you said, he's gonna be very often inclined to raise the ace of spades on the flop, I know that he's not gonna have that often. And then when I fire pretty small on the turn and then bet pretty big on the river, I know that against these specific players, I can make them fold pretty much their entire range. I'm not looking to taking the pot down necessarily on the turn, but more so on the river. And I do agree here that against a player that you're completely readless, you don't even know if he's good or if he's just a fish, a calling station fish or whatever. I agree that following up on the river here would be a pretty bad idea. So against a regular, either someone who's super nit and who's gonna fold everything but the nuts, I 3-barrel, or someone that with the historic that we have in between doesn't think that I'm gonna be bluffing if I'm representing only the ace of spades. He might call me lighter if I was representing more hands, so he knew that I know that this is a better bluff spot. But against a good player who's he's only representing the ace of spades, I don't think he's gonna try that bluff, so he's gonna fold very big spades as well. Against these two players, and that's quite a lot of players that I have in my mind, my database, I'm gonna try that 3-barrel. But against an unknown, I much rather prefer your play of betting a bit bigger to make him fold some more spades and then shutting it on the river.
Okay, yep, and I agree 110% with your analysis. I have nothing more to add. You said it. You said exactly what I was thinking, and so I totally agree. And I guess what it comes down to is there's 2 options here: betting small on the turn and big on the river, or betting big on the turn and shutting down on the river. And you would want to take option number 1 if you were playing against a player that will fold, anything but the ace of spades, or will fold a vast majority of his range. But if you don't know that, it's better to take the second option.
And you can still bet maybe even a bit smaller on the turn and then shutting down. It's not a bad play either. Just betting a bit bigger just adds a bit full equity, and I think it kind of evens out. I think I don't know the exact calling range of this guy, but I think it's a very flexible spot, in which sense that every dollar that you had in that specific spot is gonna make him fold a bit more of his range. So I think maybe the bet sizing from 30 to 60 all pretty much equals in EV against a lot of players because of all the spades in there.
I see, yeah, and that makes sense too. Okay, cool.
So that's it. Yep.
All right, I'm at 22:57. Continuing now.
Yep. All right.
Got him thinking at least.
Yeah. Can't wait to see what he's
Maybe he
do.
would have snap called if I would have bet 35.
Yeah. And if you bet smaller, if you bet like 30, 35, he might call with a queen very often too. Like just because he doesn't believe you, just because it's kind of very good bluff spot, he might call with a queen. So by betting bigger, you sure are making him fold some queens as well, which adds to the value of betting bigger here on the turn.
Yeah.
And he's still thinking. Table 4, meanwhile, you check call. You call in the big blind with 10-9 of hearts, and then you check call the flop on King 6 deuce.
Yep, I'm just pausing.
And I actually love that. I like that a lot. What were you gonna say? Just explain your thought process.
I'm just saying, yeah, I just paused the video again so that we can talk about that one.
Okay.
I still don't know if that guy called me or not because he's still thinking while I paused. But yeah, the reason is there's a couple layers here. First of all, it's like we talked about in a previous video. This is a hand that is not good enough that I can check raise and then call a re-raise. So I don't want to put myself in that spot with a hand that does have, obviously is probably live. The second thing, though, is the board is so nice and dry, and that when I check call here, if the turn checks through, then I can easily represent a king by betting the river, and he's going to fold. And the nice thing about the board being king low there is that if I could check call with a hand like pocket eights, right? But then if the turn checks through, I wouldn't bet that on the river. So if you look at it from his standpoint, if I check call the flop and the turn checks through and now I bet the river, he's going to put me very squarely on a king. And so therefore, also assuming that the turn checks through, he's not going to be able to beat a king. So he's going to have to fold a big percent of his range. Now it's very key that top card is a king, because supposing I was going to do this and the flop was Jack 6-2. There's a lot of overcards, the queen, the king, and the ace to the jack that can come. And now my line no longer has a lot of credibility, because what did I check call with that I'm now betting for value on the river after it gets overcarded? Whereas with a king, the king is likely to remain the top card on the board. Now notice, I wouldn't make this bet on the river if the river was an ace. If the turn checked through and the river was an ace. But on all other cards, I can represent top pair, and the king is not likely to be overcarded. At the same time, the king is the best card. It's better than an ace, simply because the ace is most likely to be in his range, more so than a king, by being a pre-flop under the gun raiser. So those are all of my reasons for check call.
Yeah, I do agree with everything you said. You might be a bit reluctant sometimes because, like you said, when it goes check on the turn, then you bet your river, you are representing solely a king or the whiffed flush draw. I mean, he's gonna think that you have the whiffed flush draw some percentage of time too. But one point that adds to your play here is that the original raiser, and I know he's a reeler, I've seen him while I was coaching someone, so I guess he's at least thinking a bit. He's from under the gun. So I think you have a stronger defending range on the big blind, which has like stuff like ace king and king queen suited a lot more, and less he's gonna think that you have less like suited connector type of hands or like ace low suited or stuff like that than if you would have opened from the bot. He would have opened from the button, let's say, and you would have defended your big blind. So you have, when you do lead the river, if it's entirely whiffs, you do have more fold equity against the thinking player here, just because of the fact that he was the under the gun raiser.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And the other thing is too, I think the perception is often, and this isn't categorically always true, but that someone would play a flush draw. People raise with them so much now that that my people will tend to believe that you are in fact, would have raised a flush draw at least some percentage of the time. Thus, in their mind, when you take the line of check call, check lead river, your line tends more towards being a legitimate hand.
A made hand that is trying to pot control, because of the the fact that the pot control line has been so like quote unquote overused, and people just expect you to pot control a like king queen king jack 100% of the time here. So yeah, I do agree here that he's gonna expect you, like you said, to check raise the flush draw so much if he's that kind of player, and if he doesn't know that much about your game. So it makes for an even better spot. So that's what I would have done. Like I think that particular spot against that particular type of player that I know he's kind of a standard, let's say standard NL 400 reg, maybe a bit looser if I recall correctly than like normal. I'm gonna check out that flop like 100% of the time, because I either am gonna hit and be pretty well disguised because I didn't check raise it. Plus, if I don't hit it well, I can represent the king pretty correctly.
Cool. Now,
right.
maybe now the turn did check through, and obviously when I hit the 10 on the river, there's no value in my betting. Because
No, you could, against someone, if you have like the worst bluffing image ever, and against someone who's never gonna believe you, you could go ahead and bet like pretty small here, just so he calls you with ace high, because
Yes.
he's gonna think that you're gonna have the whist flush draw. By betting here, you're basically polarizing your range completely, and that applies to that spot, and it's pretty interesting to. I can't think of another like spot who would be the same, but let's say in that spot, you're polarizing your range basically towards a king, like a flop set, or a whist flush draw. So he can call like in his mind, his ace high is just as valuable as like let's say pocket queens. So since I think there are more ace highs in his range and like there are pocket jacks or pocket queens, I think if you think that this guy might go ahead and read you for the missed flush draw, that is a really great spot to fire a big value bet here, because that is a great spot because you're so polarizing your range. He's so gonna hero call you very often with something worse.
Yep, I think that's fantastic analysis. The only sort of crimp I'm going to throw into that is that that's very deep analysis to be used on deep thinking players. And I didn't know this player at all. You say that he's a good player, that
Yeah,
you're interested.
but you didn't know it at the time, so
Right.
my default is to check as well.
Right. I'm not like there's nothing about this player that I've seen that makes me think he's going to think so deeply as to be able to, or be as like whatever sheriff type player to think that
Yep.
he'll actually call me with ace high. Once I see stuff like that, I will definitely merge my ranges more and start value betting my hand, like a 10-9 here. But until I see that, I think that I'm better off checking here just
Yep.
for standard fundamental reasons.
Yep.
But before we move on, I actually wanted to talk to you, ask you your opinion. I do remember playing this hand, and I remember that when I saw the turn card, my intention was going to be to check raise the turn. And maybe you can comment on that. The factors at play here were obviously that I picked up the gut shot straight draw to go with my flush draw, and the fact that I can now, if he bets again on the turn, I can now, his hand is probably going to be very square. If he's not bluffing, it's going to be very squarely a one pair king hand, most likely, unless he has three kings, given that he raised under the gun. And the 7 fits with the 6, so in addition to a set, I can now represent 7-6 as well. And the last and probably most important point, and one that you drove home in the last
Is the
video,
deep stack, is the deepness of the stacks, I guess.
Exactly.
Yep.
So he can't just, recklessly say, okay, I've got a king, let me just throw it all in. So most likely, if he does continue, he would continue with a call, which then allows me to, hit, I would have, 9 plus 3, 12 outs potentially on the river.
And even if you miss, I think I'm gonna shove that river. If you do go ahead and check raise that turn, I'm gonna shove that river 100% against that type of player at NL 400, because I think he's the type of player who's like gonna go with like ace king. I'm not sure if he's bluffing. I'm gonna call the turn and then see what happens. And then you shove it. I can't go broke with one pair here, and they end up folding like every single time. So for all the reasons that you've mentioned, yes, this board and this exact situation is absolutely perfect with the stacks and everything to check raise turn and like shove any river, but like let's say a deuce or a 6, I think would be like the worst rivers, or even an ace because he could have made like aces up with ace king or top set with aces. Every single other river, I'm gonna check shove it. I think.
Yep, I definitely...
just shove it. Actually, check raise turn and then shove every single other river.
Yep, I totally agree, and I think the stack sizes were perfect. The turn card was perfect. And one last comment I have about that is that by me taking the line check call flop and then check raise the turn, it doesn't look like a flush draw, because he's going to think that with a flush draw, I'm either going to check raise the flop when and play it aggressively when I have two cards to see, or I'm just going to check call. So when I check call and then check raise on the turn, it looks a lot less like a flush draw than it would have if I had check raised on the flop.
But I totally agree with you here. But I think this kind of line is nowadays being used a lot more with flush draws to not look like a flush draw by good players. You're going to see a lot of good players do that. And that is why I want to shove the river so bad. Because on the turn, he might think that, he might have a flush draw, so I'm going to call. And on the river, he's not going to have most of the time the guts to call down his whole 150 big blind stack on one pair type and on that spot. But on the turn, he might have because he probably knows, since he's a reeler, he probably knows you, probably knows that you're pretty aggressive and capable of making some moves. And he could think that sometimes, you have that flush draw, even though that's not what you're representing. That's exactly why he thinks that, okay, since he's not representing that flush draw, he could have it. Well, that's why I want to fire the river so bad against a thinking player.
Yep, I totally agree, 100%.
But now we're going into meta game, and we could go on forever. So let's say that I agree with your analysis. Without further reads, without any reads on anybody, against unknowns, you do not look like a flush draw, 0% here.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So
let's
I'll continue.
Keep on going. Let's move on.
2350. I'm continuing.
All right. I was actually expecting that thing to move by itself, but I just realized I have to click play. Play. No, it doesn't work. And then he bets the river.
He called it. Miguel called with
Yeah, man, Miguel.
His time went all the way down to 6 seconds, and then he called.
And then you're so sad. And then he fires super small. Boo. And on table 4, him betting the river, that is pretty interesting.
It is, right? What do you think? I don't even remember whether I called or not. It's an interesting spot, right? Because it's kind of weird that he would. Actually, I remember what I was thinking, and I'll tell you after.
You were probably thinking about raising here some percentage of time.
I was considering that. I was also thinking of just calling, and I think that exactly. I was thinking about raising because when I'm paused again here, 24:51.
Yep.
When he doesn't bet the turn, and now bets on the river on the 10, I think a big part of his range is going to be between a 10 and pocket queens.
Yeah.
And so I could potentially. I was, and as you saw, I timed down before I folded. I could potentially check raise there, but it's going to be a little bit hard to represent a monster simply because if I didn't river the monster, so if I don't have 3 10s, I would have likely have played it faster with, or at least he's going to think that with the stack sizes the way they are. And again,
I do agree.
Yeah,
I entirely agree.
And I don't think I can call there because it definitely looks like a value bet that he's making there, and because my hand looks like it's reasonable. I don't think he's going to expect a fold a great percentage of the time there. So I think he is making a little bit of a thin value bet with maybe even as strong as a weak king and probably no weaker than a 10, and pretty much all 10s that open under the gun are beating me.
Yeah, that's pretty much the perfect analysis for that spot against a non-known player. Of course, if you go against a known player, that is one specific spot. If you have a lot of history against a player, that it just go a lot deeper than that, and in the end, it's going to be a big guessing game because he could be bluffing because he knows that he's representing exactly what you were talking about, etc., etc. But without any further reads, you have to go with the basic read that you've just perfectly described, and that's why I would have probably fold as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm continuing.
Yep, I'm following. And for that same reason, on table one, like your king queen that you've just c-bet, that is kind of board that I'm gonna like check back a lot and then fire the turn instead because nobody's expecting you to like check back a nice ace high board with total air. They just think that you're gonna fire against a thinking player, and I think Goggles knows would have been a good candidate for that. For like checking back your air and then firing the turn with it, so he doesn't put you solely on hair like ever.
Yeah, I agree and I understand. The one thing that, in fact, I want to pause here to talk about this for a minute.
Yep.
The one thing that I would be more inclined to do it if the board was instead of ace 8-6 two suited. I would prefer to check back on ace 8 for rainbow, simply because that is a board that visually looks safer, and so is a board that I would be more inclined to check back for pot control and deception with an ace.
Yeah, I do agree. I totally agree here.
Okay, so should I just continue?
Yep.
Okay.
Now you have. I'm at pocket tens, and you've seen the flop now.
Yep. Yep. I'm maybe just in front of, just ahead of you. I've seen the turn already.
Okay, yeah.
And it's just,
so far, I think it's pretty standard way to play the hand without any further hysterics. I mean, you can't fold right away because it's just too strong, and you even have good set mining odds anyways, and it's still pocket tens, and then you don't really want to go broke against someone that you don't know. Get someone more that you have much more history, more aggressive, whatever. It could be kind of spot that you want to go ahead and go broke 100 big blinds deep, but here, here when he fires the river, I think he has the queen like 150% of the time after
okay,
like.
Cool. Great. I just paused it. I just paused it at 26-21. I was going to ask you what you thought of my river fold, but that's exactly what I think too. It's such a weird spot to bluff after not bluffing anywhere earlier in the hand. So I think he has me beat every time.
Yeah, pretty much. And plus the fact that he's gonna like fire his total air very often on that flop, and when he checks back, he's very likely to have a like middle pair like jacks or a queen like ace queen that he's trying to pot control. That you would like I said, he would bet his hair like more often here. So I think he had ace queen like 95% of the time.
Yep, I totally agree 100%. I actually thought that we might have a for some reason I had thought that might be a more in-depth discussion, but I think you and I see that one exactly the same.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll keep going then. I'm at 26-21.
Yep, I'm there. And that's something you want to play with when you're playing against good players. Let's say I'm playing against Punkety here. I want to check back that flop some percentage of the time with air once again, so that he thinks that I'm like
pot controlling some medium strength.
Pot controlling queen or like a weak king on that board or etc. So that's something you want to incorporate in your game against good thinking players.
Yeah, you know when it's really good to do that as well is you do it on boards that the turn is not likely to be the top card. You know what I mean? So if the board comes kind of high and kind of raggedy, like part of it is high and part of it is raggedy.
Yeah.
Because the point is you can get there's more credibility to your delayed continuation bet.
Yep, totally agree. You played the queen deuce of spades I think that was pretty standard.
Yeah,
not much to say there.
Chance to, I mean, I don't. If I bet the flop, I'm not anything he calls with it. I'm in bad shape unless he's floating.
Yeah, unless you have some historic of him floating a lot or making a lot of plays with every single gut shot, because there were quite a lot of like possible straight draws on that board. But then again, out of position with these stacks, I think I prefer just like pot controlling the flop, and it adds deception to your hand value a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about my game is I really pepper on the blind versus blind hands. I'm always like anybody that doesn't offer me enough resistance, I'm always attacking the blind versus blind situations, And
Yep.
so once players start trying to combat me, then when I have a hand like that, I'll just go ahead and bet simply because I'm trying to induce a float. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, because players will often on a board like that, Queen 9-9, they're thinking, no way can he have anything because usually I can't. So it's a good board to actually bet, let someone call, then check the turn, and let them try to make a play. You know?
Yep. I totally agree.
I'm going to pause here. Talk about table 2, 28-43 is where I'm paused.
Yep.
Just a standard spot. I just want to make a quick mention because we had talked about this I think it was a previous video where I actually recorded back-to-back-to-back videos here tonight, so I'm not sure if it was...
I think it was number 2, I think, with like the ace 5 of spades, you flop the nut flush around like
okay, yeah.
9-6 deuce of spades.
Right. Now, this is a situation
with 2 spades, yeah. Exactly.
Yep, this is a situation now where, like, you know, if I had a flush draw, I would be more inclined to raise, whereas the straight draw is a very clear spot where I think I should just call, because it's if I hit it, it's going to be more well disguised if he's actually got a legitimate hand, and if not, if I hit a spade, that's going to be a big part of my bluffing outs. Whereas my just flat call in his mind is going to look like just a jack or even like a 7 or pocket 8s or something like that. So I'm more inclined to catch him off guard and get paid if I hit my straight and be able to bluff if I hit the flush, which is why it's in general, obviously you have to mix this up for players that are observant, but in general it's better to call with these types of hands and raise with your flush draw type of hands.
Yep. And here I don't know if you're at the turn. I'm at the turn, and then he check to you, and then you bet. I think. Are you there?
Well, I'm at the point where the turn card just came. So.
Okay. Okay.
Well, so now we know what's going to happen. But go ahead and talk. Yep. So he checked and I bet.
Yeah, basically he checks and then you bet. What I wanted to mention is that that turn card is probably the worst turn card for a 2-barrel, but you still have to do it just because he is going to keep on firing most of his value, like king jack and up. He's just going to fire just not to give you a free card on that board, and just because you're 100 big blinds deep, so there's no real point in trying to pot control here. So everything big here is going to keep on firing. So basically what your float accomplishes by betting the turn here, you're not representing much, but you know he's going to fold 100% of his hair that is better than your hair. So I think even though it's like the worst card, it's still a very good spot to go ahead and fire, and that would make me tend to like fire a bit less, like fire smaller, something like in 67 I would fire like even like 30, even not even half pot, because I think the only thing that I'm making him fold, since I'm not representing much here, is his hair. So no matter how much I bet, I'm going to make him fold like 100% of his hair. I don't know if you agree here, unless there's some more historic involved that like if I bet smaller, he could go ahead and like check raise me with like some kind of weird draw or whatever. Or if I float way too much, he could check raise me here for value. But as a default here in that particular spot where the only ends that I'm looking forward to making him fold are his air, I'm gonna like fire the turn smaller, and to counter that, I'm gonna fire the turn smaller if I do have a big end, let's say like any 5 or pocket 7 or like pocket jack here.
Yep, no, that makes perfect sense. I do agree in principle. I mean, sometime I think this will be too long of a discussion to have right now, but sometime we should talk about just the whole concept of bet sizing deviation.
Yeah, exactly. That could be a very long and interesting discussion.
Yeah, and without I don't think that this video warrants it at the moment. So within let me just put it this way: is I agree 100% with your analysis. That being said, I think there are merits to keeping bet sizes relatively standard against very observant opponents relative to street. And so let's just leave it at that for now. I'll say I completely agree with your analysis with a caveat that I want to revisit that topic in the future.
yeah, certainly.
Okay, cool. I will continue now. I'm at 28-43.
Yep. All right.
But I totally agree here that I'm only expecting him to fold his air, but at the same time, I expect him to have air of a very
big percentage
very large
of time.
Yep.
Exactly. any calls,
Yeah,
which is fun.
yeah, interesting decision there whether or not I should fire on that river, and I think the answer is no. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. Just because of the reason we've just mentioned, like you are not representing basically anything here, so he can hero call you with a whole lot of stuff. Just because the flop offered like so many gut shots, so many open enders, and the flush draw, and like just so many draws. And if he's like semi capable of hand reading, he can call you with ace high if you bet here like 100% of time and be very. Uh, Comfortable with that play.
Yep, I agree.
So I think it's like the worst, like the board ended up the worst way possible, that there's no way you can represent anything, so you just have to check it down and give it up.
Yep. So, okay, a couple of interesting spots here. I'm just going to pause here. I'm at 30.06, and I want to talk about tables 3 and 4. On table,
I'm kind of late. All right.
okay. Good. So on table 3, Sigwin opened.
Okay, yeah.
And I called in the small blind with pocket jacks, and then there was a raise, and then he re-raised, and I think that's a standard fold. Do you agree?
Without any history between players, yep, I agree that this is a fold.
Okay. Okay, so I don't really think...
You're up against... Queens plus ace king. I don't think he's ever doing that with tens. So yeah. I don't think your equity is good enough. Plus you have Miguel who could have a big end as well, so it's pretty easy fold, yeah.
Right. I mean, I think that the likelihood of I'm never ever against anything that I dominate in both spots, and the best I could hope for is to be racing against both of them. But the chances of at least one of them having me completely dominated is much too high for me to continue. And I think it's really not that. It's a pretty standard and easy fold, but I think it's one of these things that is worth talking about because I see too many people make the mistakes, and hopefully no Blue Fire members will be doing that after watching these videos, is that they see a hand that has a lot of absolute value, like jacks, and they say, you know what, screw it. Hopefully they both have ace king, they have each other's outs, let me ship it in. It's only 100 big blinds. And you have
when I'm stuck, I'm thinking exactly like that. I'm not folding jacks, screw it.
So I mean, that's my but at the same time, and there is an opportunity, that it is possible you were against two ace kings, but the thing to always keep in mind is you're playing against a range. You're not playing against a hand. You're playing against whatever you can narrow your opponent's range down to, and against the range of the two hands that I'm against, the jacks are going to be a pretty big underdog.
Yep.
And so I think, and not only an underdog, but if I'm behind, I'm crushed. So pretty standard fold. Okay, now I want to talk about table 4, and I hope I'm remembering this hand correctly. But as you can see, I flop. There's a 4-way pot. I flop a gut shot straight draw on a completely dry board, and it checks to. I hope I did actually check raise because that's what I'm going to say that I did. And
I'm actually never ever folding that spot. I think I'm either check calling to use my position and the whole 4-way multi-way pot to look super strong when I'm check calling here. You cannot expect me to check call with like something as weak as that, so I can take the pot on later streets a lot, or check raise just because it's gonna be full of shit so often that you can take the pot down so often. I'm never ever folding with that gut shot in that particular spot.
Yeah, good. And I actually would argue that a check raise is significantly stronger than a check call here. The reason is it's 4-way to the pot, and there's multiple reasons. First of all, if there's no draws on board, no 6-5 I guess is the only legitimate draw. There's no flush draw, and that's the only open-ended straight draw. So if I check raise here, my opponent cannot put me on a draw. So that means that I'm either stone bluffing or I have a very legitimate hand in their eyes.
Yep.
But at the same time, am I really going to make a stone bluff into 3 other players as a check raise with the other 2 guys still left to act? It wouldn't seem very reasonable. So therefore, my hand is going to have a ton of credibility with a check raise there. Notice that this is way more true because the board is an uncoordinated rainbow board. If the board was coordinated rainbow, first of all, people could put me on a draw, and second of all, there's more hands that they can have themselves that they can continue with. That's my first point.
Yeah, I totally agree. Basically, you are polarizing your range, but you are totally aware of that fact, and you know that you aren't representing that many end combinations, but you have it so often just because of this situation that he has to give you credit for it. So he's going to fold, like, even top pair jack here is going to be pretty tough for him to continue playing.
Yeah, and again, but there's multiple points too. First of all, the pre-flop raiser checked, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep.
And so therefore, I mean, there's pretty much no situation ever in which the person who raised pre-flop in this spot could then check and then be able to continue when faced with a raise and a re-raise. So we can eliminate crab claws from the equation.
Yep.
Similarly, Papa Fox he's not when he just called pre-flop, and when he's faced with a raise and a re-raise, he's out unless he has a set. And
I think actually Papa Fox was the original raiser from under the gun.
Oh, all right.
But that it's still the same.
Okay.
Same thing.
Yeah. Sorry, that my mistake. But yeah, same analysis. And now Shem is the last person to act, so it very much looks like it's a steal position for him because everyone checked to him. So why not take a stab? So he's likely not to have air a lot of the time. In addition to a one pair hand that he's going to be hard pressed to continue with. And moreover, look at his bet size. He only bet 28 into 83.
Yeah, it's like a bluff so often.
Yeah. So and again, if I check raise here, it's going to be so difficult for anybody to give me anything that isn't super strong because it appears, even though it's not, it appears suicidal to be running a bluff into all three players still.
But it's very far from suicidal in reality.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's one more point, and it's something that we've discussed in previous videos of this series, is that in addition to having my gut shot, there's a ton of cards that give me, I've got backdoor draws. I can, I can, if I get called, I can continue my bluff is good enough here that I could continue on a brick too, but I can certainly continue on any club. Any six, six gives it to me. Any club, any deuce, I guess that's it.
And any ace too, and the ace gives you a double.
Ace, yep. I knew there was more.
Maybe even, I could add like a 3 or an 8. That if he thinks that you have 5-6 for the open ender, yep. I think that are the cards that you were looking for, like the 8 and the 3 that puts 5-6 there, so he's gonna have to fold a lot more hands, and that's pretty much it. That's still a big percentage of cards. Like you can hit the 6, 8 or 3, you keep on firing, ace, and that's it.
and the 8's particularly,
and the club too, exactly.
Yeah. And the 8's particularly nice because not only does it complete 6-5, but
it completes 9-10 as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
I just want to add one last thing about this, and don't go mad with what I'm gonna say, guys. Don't overuse what I'm gonna say. But my tendency here is gonna be to against standard players in that particular spot. If I'm Niman here in that particular hand, I am check raising, and I think that's by far the best play. But against very good thinking players in my normal game, I think I would go ahead and check call more here because if I think the guy on the button is a very good player, he is going to be able to read that situation correctly, making my check call way more powerful. Since there are a lot of gut shots, and I would know that this guy is capable of reading gut shots, and that play for being one that I could do with a gut shot a lot because of everything that Niman analyzed. If I think that my opponent is capable of analyzing all that, I'm gonna check call a lot more because I could have a set a lot, and I'm not either. I don't think he's gonna think that I'm ever check calling here with something weaker than a pair of jacks, so I can take the pot down on later streets a lot. He's gonna shut down his bluffs a lot because I could be slow playing as well. But against normal unknown players or whatever, just go ahead and check raise that spot. It's by far the better play. But if you are against people that are aware that check raising is super good here, you can take it to the next level and check all that.
Yeah, that's great analysis, and as always, that fits into the to the mode of thinking that we were talking about. That it's always important to try to get a good handle on what your opponents are thinking, at what level they're thinking, and to stay exactly one step ahead of that.
Yep, exactly. But basically here, bottom point, I'm never folding, I think, except for if the players are some weird players that are never folding any pair. I think I'm never folding that spot because I have such the perfect spot to represent something big that I don't even have to have something big to make the play, to take down the pot, actually.
Yeah. Okay, now after saying all that, I really hope I did check raise because I did play this several weeks ago.
and then I check fold.
Yeah. All right, so here you go. I'm continuing. Oh, thank God. I did play this several weeks ago.
I like your sizing too. You don't have to make it that big just because there's no draw there, and you would not like check raise a set super big here. So yeah, check raising pretty small here just accomplishes the same work as check raising big.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got there, but you've got something weird happening.
Something weird happening, meaning
Papa Fox.
Yeah, Papa. Yeah. But I'm going to pause again. I'm not sure what's. I just got to the turn, and Papa Fox called the 2-bets cold.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an interesting, very, very interesting development here because Papa Fox, and I'm glad you pointed this out because I would have screwed up my analysis here if you hadn't.
Easier.
He was the pre-flop raiser, so when he checks, and then it goes bet and raise, and he just calls. I think that his range is going to be very squarely ace jack or above, but no better. He's not. I don't, because at this point, especially with the gut shots on the board, we're gonna. He's never, since he opened pre-flop, he can never have 2 pair on that flop.
No,
so
I agree.
And if he has a set, he's going to hammer it. Presumably, you know what I mean, because with the others in the hand and the gut shots available and our stacks being deep, he just doesn't want to lose his hand or his market.
Yeah. I think he could like slow play pocket jacks sometimes just because it's still pretty dry board and he has to upset and he wants to slow play. That could happen, but I kind of agree with. My first reflex. I think that spot would be to put him like squarely on pocket jacks and then shut down my bluff. But I prefer your analysis here. I think he could have something like ace jack way more often.
Yeah, and well, ace jack, and even this guy is a regular, as you've told me. He's a thinking player.
Yep.
He clearly knows what he's doing, and if he had raised pre-flop with ace jack, or even pocket queens or kings or aces, and 3 people see the flop, including another player who's got over 150 big blinds to start the hand, it's not necessarily an auto c-bet. You know what I mean?
No, I entirely agree, and I'm gonna check that a lot with like aces here, just to add a lot of deception to my hand, and basically like pot control too as well, and then try to pick up some bluffs from the guy on the button, etc., etc.
Yep. Now the turn card is very interesting because it does give me some more outs in the form of. I'm assuming he doesn't have pocket jacks, then I don't have many outs left. I do still have one though.
Yeah, always one out. You can't fold.
But it does give me more outs. So I mean, as we did the analysis, we said if we do get called. And I wasn't planning on being called by Papa Fox. I was thinking being called by Shen.
No, of course not.
If I do get called, I can continue on the clubs, and I hit a club. The problem is it pairs the 4, which takes 4/4 out of my range for him.
Yeah.
So it also, although I can rarely have 2 pair in this spot. When the bottom card pairs like that, psychologically, people feel good with an overpair. You know what I mean? Because they feel like they're protected against any 2 pair combination. Aces beats Jack 7 now. even though that's not really relevant because I can't really have Jack 7. I mean, I guess I could, but most people can't. So it's not good because all of a sudden now I'm stuck to representing pocket 7s or possibly pocket Jacks, but a Jack is a likely card to be in his hand, so that's discounted too. So the turn card is good in that it was in the club, but not good in that it paired the 4. I mean, I think pairing the 4 is the worst card for it to pair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I do agree 100%. It's pretty tough to represent, but at the same time, you can go a level higher. Like, I really don't know what I would do here. I'm trying to think if I would keep on bluffing or no. I'm still undecided because at the same time, I mean, he knows that like it's no longer good for us to bluff here. So he has to give us credit for hand, like if he's a thinking player. But now you're just entering a guessing game, and it's pretty tough. I think what would like lean me towards not keeping on my bluff is the fact that first, if I check, he's gonna check back a lot, and I could spike a club or a 6. And if I bet, I'm just building the pot. Like, I don't expect him to fold the turn that often. Plus the fact that he could have pocket jacks, that there's no way I'm going to make him fold pocket jacks here. So I think I would be lean towards giving up with the hope of, like, hitting on the river. Or sometimes even, like, putting out a very big bet on the river, like checking, hoping to represent the fact that I might, like, check pocket 7s here and then I lead, like, I don't know, 350 on the river, a big overbet, trying to represent that pocket 7s, and he knows that it's like too weird to be a bluff, so it must be value. So you can still go ahead and continue your bluff just because he is a thinking player and he knows that it's no longer a good bluff spot for you. It's like the worst bluff spot ever. So he's gonna fold. I think you can make him fold aces by the end of the river, by the river, if you size it like something like 120 and then shove the river or something like that. I think he's gonna fold aces every single time just because you can't possibly be bluffing after what happened. But at the same time, since he could have the absolute nuts himself, it's not that great of a spot. So I'm still undecided. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Okay, I actually, once again, I agree with your thought process, but not the conclusion for the same reasons that when we talked about, again, we've recorded 3 videos in a row, so I'm like, it's all running together. I don't remember whether it was in this one or a previous one, but you remember the video in which I double-barreled the guy on the 4-spade board?
Actually, I think it was in this video.
It was in this one. Okay, good. I didn't, and I liked betting the turn and shutting down on the river, and therefore I like betting big on the turn. Whereas you had talked about the possibility of betting small on the turn and shoving the river.
Yep.
Now, in this case, I think I do like myself to bet again. I see your point, I see your analysis, and I definitely think it's very reasonable. Like checking the turn, and then if he checks back, making like a big overbet on the river. But that becomes a little bit pricier, and it may or may not work because the river bet. Say I bet 350 on the river, he knows that's the end of it.
Yeah.
Now the thing. Now I don't remember what I did, so I might not actually support my own analysis with my play. But looking at it now, I like a turn bet primarily because of the stacks. If you look at the stack sizes, they're still formidable, right? I still have over 100 big blinds in my stack, and he has me covered. So I could bet something like 180 on this turn, which to him is going to look like he's going to be facing a river shove. And the river, if I bet 180, there's still going to be another 270 on the river.
That's why, though, I think I'd much rather prefer that. That's what I was saying. If I'm to continue with this bluff, I think betting like 120 is a bit more powerful here because he's gonna be against a thinking player, against an unknown, of course, 180. Like against someone that you know is not really a thinking player, 180 is just more powerful because it is bigger. But against a thinking player, I think like the 120 is even more powerful because he knows that he's going to be facing a pot-sized bet on the river, and that is going to be really hard to call. And you are going to shove the river way more often after you bet like 180 on turn. And like you're probably not just trying to bluff with that turn bet. As if you bet 180 on the turn, you might think that, okay, he's trying for that last barrel, and if he shoves the river, like there's not that much left, so he probably won't be a bluff. So he's gonna like try to call the turn, and maybe even more often than he would if you only bet 120, because he expects you to shove the river 100% of the time if you bet 120. But once again, you don't have enough of a read on that player to assume that kind of thing, so that kind of sucks.
Yeah, that is definitely a different way of looking at it psychologically. Like for me, I was thinking if I bet 120, he can say to himself, well, it's only 120, it's half the pot. I can call that bet and fold to the river bet. Whereas if I bet 180, I'm thinking he's going to think, God, he's going to bet 180 and then I'm going to have to call another 270 on the river. So when I bet 180, I think it looks more to him like he's calling 450 than if I bet 120 where he can actually, quote-unquote, get away with calling the 120 and then still saving himself by folding on the river. Now,
I think I do agree, and I think I'm just analyzing it a bit deeper than you are, just regarding Villain's point of view. I mean, I think I give him more credit than you are, and against someone that I don't really have a read on, I would much rather go with your analysis most of the time, because, well, I don't really have a read on him, so I can't go ahead and assume what I've just explained that he thinks about all that, because I think that that's how a good player is going to view the situation.
Yeah, and I guess ultimately what it comes down to is you have to decide when you're playing your opponent. Presumably, you know, those of you watching this video, you'll be playing the your opponents, and you won't come across a lot of people that will be completely readless like I am, since I'm playing here for the first time. And so what you have to answer, like in this kind of situation, you have to ask yourself the question, okay, first, do I decide to barrel a second time or not? If your decision is yes, then what you want to ask yourself is, if you bet 120, will your opponent think that that means you're going to shove the river a huge percentage of the time or not? And if so, then you want to bet 120. Otherwise, if you think that the bigger bet will make him feel like he's facing the whole stack, then you bet bigger. And I think in either case, the correct play would be to shut down if he missed on the river. Would you agree? If he calls your turn?
I'm really not sure, because I think I would tend to, if I go ahead and bet the turn, to bet the river again, because I'm really not sure. I would need a better read on the player. I think readless, I would probably just shut down on turn. And if I am to bluff the turn, most of the time I'm going to keep on bluffing the river. Just because you said, because of the 4 pairing, he's going to be so comfortable with like aces here that he's willing to call the turn. Like, very often, like, he's not even go as deep as we did in the analysis, and he's like, oh, I'm comfortable with aces here, I'm going to call one street. So I think you don't get him off that many ends, but at the time it's just 100% player dependent here. So readless, I really don't know. I think even readless, I think I would go ahead, and my favorite play personally here would be to bet 120 and then shove the river, I think, if I am to bluff, or either shut down if I think he's not going to fold. I'm not 100% sure it's the correct play. I think we would have to ask Galfin about this one.
Or maybe Papa Fox. Maybe Papa Fox, if you're a Blue Fire member, let us know what you would have done.
Yeah. what you would do with all your holdings gets really, really interesting spot here. It's just all psychological, and it all comes down to
I guess for me the thought process, well, I say was, but I actually don't remember what I did. But right now my thought process is that I don't want to, because you're, like you said, he could, after he calls the bet and the raise, he could definitely have, the jacks full here. So yeah. I don't, I want to, if I bet the turn, I want to bet it and shut down on the river. So it's the least expensive way for me to bluff by betting 180 here, rather than 120, because if I bet 120, I'm expecting to get called a second time. Put it this way, if I bet 120, I think I'm expecting to be called by hands that are willing to fold on the river more often than if I bet 180.
And that's why I want to, like, if I bet 120, I'm gonna keep on bluffing. I'm gonna shove the
Yeah.
pot.
So that's why you bet 120 to shove. That's why
Yep.
I bet 180 to shut down.
Yep.
Which both,
Exactly.
that's like six of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yep.
So, okay, so let's see what happened.
Let's see.
I'm as eager to find
Just
out.
one last quick note.
Yep.
Let's say you end up betting like maybe 150. Let's say bet somewhere in between, and he calls, and the river is like the deuce of clubs giving you the flush. What do you think is your best play here?
Oh,
That's really, I think personally,
check fold.
in that spot, if I river the flush, I'm gonna check fold.
Yeah, I agree.
Just because I think he's gonna fold out everything but a full house on the river,
Yeah.
and he's not gonna value bet ever thinner than a full house. So
Yeah.
I would check fold the river.
I agree with that actually because I definitely agree because it would be a ridiculous spot for him to then bet with aces, and at the same time, if your hand now obviously has tremendous showdown value for all the hands. I mean, you win all the hands that he checks back with.
Yep.
So I actually 100% agree with that. That if
All right. And that's something that there are a lot of spots that arise like that people just don't apply. They're like, okay, I'm gonna bet, and then river flush. Oh, I have to value bet, and then they forget everything they thought about during the hand, and they just shove just because they have a good hand. But they're not ever gonna get called by worse, and you want to be able to recognize that kind of spots. It's pretty tricky, but it does not arise that often. But the fact is, when they arise, these kind of spots, it's usually in very big pots, and you're on the river, and making a mistake is so costly that you definitely want to avoid that kind of mistake. That is the very biggest kind of mistake that you want to avoid, because you have basically no AV with that kind of play. You're like 0 AV with a big bet on the river, which is like the worst possible case.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. That's a fantastic point, and I actually want to tie that together with a kind of hand that's not a big hand that happens all the time, because it's the same principle at work. And I think, Martin, you said it exactly right. People seem to understand the principle, but then mess it up when they play it in these big pots, even though they play it correctly in the small pots. For example, let's say that someone bets and you decide to run a bluff with a flush draw or something, and you check raise them on the flop, and they call the check raise, and then you bet the turn, and they call the turn, but then you river and overpair to the board on the river. Usually, what people will do now is check and fold, because now their hand has showdown value, because they'll beat the hands that the opponent is gonna check back with, and he's not going to bluff them off, because obviously, like, just for example, let's say it's a low flop, and the pre-flop raiser bets and you check raise him with a flush draw, and the turn is also kind of low, and then you bet again and he calls, and then the river is a king, and you were doing it with king queen of the suit. Now you're going to check, and because the pot's too big for you to be value betting the king here, and you check and you hope that it checks back. If he bets, you're going to fold, because he probably was slow playing some kind of monster. That's the same principle here at work. It's just that because in terms of the relative value, your flush is no stronger than top pair was in that other hand.
Yeah, exactly. It really comes down to relative value, and I think a lot of people have problem with that, and that's exactly the word that I could have looked for to explain all of that. I love the word.
Yeah, and it's. I think that's one of the most common mistakes we see among decent but not great players, is that they treat their hands more with their absolute value than with their relative value. So I agree with you 100%. If you river a flush, you check and fold, unless it's a 6 of clubs.
Yeah, of course.
All right, so let's. We're over an hour now on this video, so let's just see what happened, and then we can wrap this up.
That looks pretty cool. I actually already saw what happened.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
just tell me when you see it. I'm kind of a bit ahead.
Okay. I see that I actually made a real healthy bet there on the river.
On the turn?
On the turn, yeah.
And I think I love that even more than like a 180 bet. I think if you go ahead and bet big on the turn, I love the very, very healthy bet, because that $40 more is gonna just like he's not gonna call with aces here, like ever. I don't think so. Like even though it's kind of weird that you're betting the pot, Cheddar, he's gonna go ahead and think. I think like he wouldn't make such a big bet if he was bluffing. Like he doesn't have to bet that big. I'm just gonna wait for a better spot for my like 150 big blinds deep. So I think I really love that play. I think I didn't think about it, but betting like the pot just shuts down everything but pocket jacks very, very often here, just because he doesn't want to call that. Even though you're not representing that many more hands in his head, he just doesn't want to call that. And my first instinct, if I was him here, would be like, that's weird, but I'll wait for something better. I don't even want to call. So I really love the play that you actually did in the video. I love it more. I love betting more like 220 than like 180. Yeah, I don't know if you agree here, but I love it.
Yeah, I actually do and I don't. I love it for the reasons that I like it for the reasons that you said. But the thing is, I did kind of feel priced in. So
what the hell? I really don't like the call of the shove though.
Yeah, I agree. That was a big mistake. That's what I was about to get at. I guess what happened was I ended up feeling priced in, partly because he tanked, and I put a lot of stock in his timing. So then because he tanked, I figured that, okay, he does have pocket aces or something like that. And I thought that I was, obviously he could have been trap tanking, but I just believed that it was legitimate. And so then by making that big pot bet, I felt like I was now priced in because I did think that he had an overpair.
I kind of understand, because of thinking. Yeah, you're almost priced in, actually. I just thought about it, and it's pretty close. And that I didn't think about this one, that if you shoves, you're almost priced in, so it's pretty tricky. Yeah, I didn't think about this.
I was getting like, what is it, like 6.5 to 1 or 6 to 1, I think, on my last call. And so that would be a catastrophic fold if he had pocket aces. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So So I think I did kind of, against his range, I did feel like I did need to call on the end, but because I needed to call on the end, that may have made the 220 bet a little bit not as good. Maybe I should have bet 180 so I could more comfortably fold to a shove.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I didn't even think about calling a shove, but you're kind of priced in, etc., so it's a lot less appealing than what I thought. But at the same time, I thought that he would fold a lot of hands, so I thought that, I think he's just not shoving aces here. So when he does, he just takes me by surprise, and I'm fucked, and I'm probably doing exactly what you're doing. But I do agree that it's not as good as I thought, just because that you're kind of priced in.
Yeah, but by the way, it's interesting to note that he called on the flop the bet and the raise with just Jack 10.
So he must have made the exact analysis that we made, that you had such a great spot to try and take down the pot with that check raise that he can go ahead and call.
Yeah. It's either that or it must be because you've identified him as a good player. So that was actually very good analysis. It was either very good or just
really bad, of course. But I think since he's a regular, we'll give him some credit for not being total retard.
Yeah. Maybe I'm just mad now losing that pot.
And of course, if he doesn't turn that clubs draw, he's folding that Jack 10 100%. I think. Right. I think that the clubs draw just let him put the rest of his stack in. I really don't think that he's calling F with Jack 10. I never ever. He's just not doing it with Jack 10 on the turn if he doesn't turn that flush draw. So that turn card was probably the worst turn card in the whole deck.
Yeah.
For this exact situation.
It made me continue. It made him continue, and
exactly. So it kind of sucked a lot. But that was pretty interesting spot. But it won't arise that often. So it was pretty interesting discussion.
I think it was really. I think the thing to take away from this, for you guys watching the video, is the thought process that we went through, because that was actually a very rich, very detailed hand, in which there were so many things to consider every step of the way. And, both in terms of our perceived images on the flop, and then, as well as on the turn, and then bet sizing, and then ranging, whether I was priced in or not, et cetera, et cetera. I think it was, obviously you guys aren't going to repeat that hand, but I think that hopefully this will give you an idea of how you should go about thinking about your hands as you play them. You want to assimilate as much information as you can when making your decisions.
Yep, that's exactly it. I mean, you just had a pretty good example of what very good players think about when they are playing a hand. I say that in all modesty, but we are very good players. I'm sorry if that sounds like full of shit or whatever, but that's it. That's what we are, and that's what very good players are gonna think about when they play that kind of big pots and that kind of big hands. And you want to be able to take every single factor that we took into consideration yourself when you're playing a big hand of poker like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And try to use the thought process that you take to make all those decisions and apply them to all your routine small hands as well.
Yep, exactly.
And just to comment before we wrap up the video, I think the people that you're talking to think that we're good players if they've made it to this point in the video.
Yeah, probably. So for the two people still listening, that it was Martin Fournier-Giguère with Niman King Gray. So yeah, I hope people just didn't get bored of that. I had a lot of fun doing it, so I guess that's what counts.
Yeah, so did I, Martin. This has been my favorite videos to make by far, and looking forward to doing the rest of it. I think we're probably somewhere about halfway through my session, so we'll get 3 or 4 more videos out of this, and then we'll do yours.
Yeah, and mine was totally crazy. It was very fun and totally crazy, so it will be just as fun.
Good. That'll be good. I look forward to looking at that. So I understand you're going traveling now for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I might be away for a couple of weeks, so I don't know. We should find some holes somewhere in both our schedules.
Yeah,
not that I have an agenda or a schedule or something like that, but I just will be away from home. So
yeah,
we'll find time to make the rest.
We certainly will. We'll look forward to it. I was just going to say have a good trip. I wasn't talking about scheduling.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, guys, this is Niman and Martin signing off.
Bye.